Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm here with a few more tips when it comes to line editing your novel. And for those of you who are visual learners, I have a few examples so that you have something to compare your work to. First up, we have word choice. Now, when it comes to word choice, there are a few areas in your novel that you may need to address. One of them are those pesky little words that sound alike but mean different things. Words such as steal versus steal, or break versus break, or ask versus ask. So it is up to you to determine whether or not your character needs a break, or she needs to put on brakes, or if she needs to remain still, or if she is stealing. There are actually programs that you can add to your computer, such as Grammarly, that can find these mistakes for you. Another issue when it comes to word choice is being more creative. Say, for instance, you want to describe an overcast day. You may say that the day is gray. And although I'm pretty sure that your readers can visualize a gray day, I'm also sure that you can do a better job than this. What type of gray is it? Is it a dingy gray? Is it a dusty gray? Or an ashen gray? These are the times when the thesaurus can come in handy. Next up, we have point of view. So when it comes to writing a story, there are 3 points of view. There is first person point of view, told from the character's perspective. There is second person point of view, where the story is told using the pronoun you. For instance, so you thought you had the upper hand. Well, guess what? You didn't. And we have third person point of view, told from the perspective of the narrator. With third person point of view, there is the option of telling the story using third person limited, which is most common. It tells the story only from the main character's point of view, or third person omniscient. Here the narrator tells the story from the main character's point of view, but we can also enter the minds of other characters that the main character encounters. You need to decide at the start of your story which of these points of view you will be writing from. Most of the issues I have encountered when it comes to third person point of view is some writers begin jumping inside of other characters' heads throughout the story, when third person limited is the determined point of view established at the beginning of the story. You may come across an issue when, say for instance, one of your characters, let's call her Betty, is talking to the main character John. And the narrator tells us that Betty is just sick and tired of John's antics. But because the story is being told from John's point of view, how does the narrator know this? If your story is supposed to be only told from John's point of view, and you need to get across Betty's frustration to the reader without getting inside of her head, it is your job as a writer to find a better way to do this without confusing your reader. One way to do this is through the use of the phrasing used after a signal tag. Signal tags are words like he said, she said, they said. For instance, you could say, I'm just tired of this conversation, Betty said, her voice rising, sounding agitated. Or we can view Betty through John's eyes. Betty refused to make eye contact with me, a clear indication she was becoming frustrated with this conversation. Another issue you may need to take a look at is trying to find your character's voice. I recently read a mystery novel where all the characters pretty much spoke the same. There was no real clear indication in speech that set any of the characters apart. For instance, this is a dialogue from a 10-year-old boy who is being questioned by a detective about a recent fire at his home. He thinks and also sleeps hard. If I had told Mom about the sound, she wouldn't have let me go. She doesn't want to admit it, but I'm grown up. Now, I have an 11-year-old son, and I'm pretty familiar with how children of a certain age speak. This dialogue is very concise and not really typical of how most 10-year-olds talk. If you are seeing this problem in your writing, you may need to write out your character's background story and get to know them. This can be helpful and enable you to write dialogue specific only to them. And not only should your character's voice be true to the age group or culture or status of the person who is speaking, it should also follow along the lines of how people actually speak. Over the last year or so, I have purchased a few books written by indie authors that I ended up tossing because I just couldn't get through them because of the dialogue. They could have actually been pretty decent stories, but I will never know because I lost interest a few pages in. Here's an example from one of those books. What's going on, he asked. There's a ghost in my room. He stared at her. There's a ghost in my room. It's bleeding and it's sitting in my room right now. What happens when I go there and don't find anything? Are you going to keep crying or come to terms with whatever it is you need to come to terms with? It's a girl older than me. It's barefoot and it's bleeding. In this scene, the dialogue is kind of clipped and stagnant in its delivery. To me, it doesn't really feel natural. Now, you've seen a ghost in your room, it's bleeding and it's sitting on your floor. I don't feel any sense of urgency coming from any of these characters. Now you've told me there's a ghost in your room and I don't believe you. I think you're making this up. Here I should be giving you the business. For instance, what happens when I go there and don't find anything, huh? Are you going to keep crying or come to terms with whatever it is you need to come to terms with? Which is it? Again, it might be helpful to those of you who struggle with writing dialogue to read it aloud, sort of like a play. Try acting out the scenes. And last but not least, another tip when it comes to line editing your story is paragraph formatting. Recently, I've come across a lot of writers who don't seem to understand when it's time to begin a new paragraph. Here's an example of that. Anna gave me a wry smile. So how's Mr. Big D? I mean, Mr. Bicep. We both laughed and Kate looked at me in pure disbelief. Who is this Mr. Big D / Bicep? I gave Anna a hard look that said, don't you dare, and then back at Kate. Oh, just someone I met a few weeks ago, nothing serious. The way these sentences are formatted, it becomes unclear as to who is actually speaking. A better way to write this would be, Anna gave me a wry smile. So how's this Mr. Big D? I mean, Mr. Bicep. She and I both laughed. Kate looked at me in pure disbelief. Who is this Mr. Big D / Bicep? I gave Anna a hard look that said, don't you dare, and then back at Kate. Oh, just someone I met a few weeks ago, nothing serious. By taking each sentence and spacing them apart, it helps to clarify who is actually speaking, and you get a better perspective as to what is happening in this scene. So these are a few tips that you can use when line editing your novel. I hope that something I said here today can help you write a better story. See you again next week when I come back to offer you a few more tips. And I want to wish you good luck on your writing journey.